Hey guys, this is DFD, aka Dark Frozen Deaths, back with another Kamihime project video. Now, this one is going to be a union event, so I will say this out the gate. If you are in a union that is likely not going to get all the rewards, and you do want the rewards, you're probably going to need to leave the union right now that you're in, and try and join a new one, because you will not be able to once this event starts. So I'm trying to get this video out before the event starts. Once the event starts, meaning once we go into maintenance, it's too late. So as soon as possible, make sure your union is capable of clearing all the missions. Because you can join a union after it starts, but you cannot leave a union once it starts. But anyways, that said, this is another one of the Seraph union events. We will eventually get the Willems again, but not till way later down the line. So that's something to remember. This one, however, has a little bit of importance if you're trying to raise a fire team, because of the fact that the Union event weapons are very good, or at least the assault one is. The defender is dependent on the person, but you can get these again in the same year. As in, when we get the Phantom one eventually, you can get another copy of these weapons from this event. So that said, if you are really trying to get a good spike on your fire team, this is a good time to do so, because you can get this weapon and it's a very good one. You can get it twice thanks to that. But anyways, going into further conditions, since this is a union event, you're going to want to not send any assistance requests for I forgot what it's called. I think it's thrones. But you don't want to send any assistance to anyone for that one, except for to other union members, to try and get the most out of that. This is mainly just, it's mainly just, as it says, focus on the union. You can still get requests for the thrones battles, but the Seraph fights themselves, you can only get union members in on those. But also because of that, this event, it's going to be very important that you grind out thrones in order to get the most out of the Seraph fights. Because thrones will give us divine rings. In fact, the demon equivalent is grails, and these will give you some buffs. Now, I personally forgot the exact percentages for some of this stuff, but I do remember that when you apply these buffs, they go to 100 for each count, and you can only apply up to 400 rings per day. But the majority of these buffs stop at 150% increase, meaning you get 1.5 times the level. So that would happen to be the attack power, the burst damage, the HP, and the recovery. They all go up to 150% more. So if you max out attack power, which is recommended, 150% more assault, and you max out the recovery, then the healing cap and the amount, I think it says the amount, but the cap definitely increases by 150%, so there's that. So that said, pick and choose which ones you want wisely. Some very good ones that also should be noted are the attack increases, which is the combo rate increases, which is the double attack and the triple attack, because they're both very significant. If I remember correctly, it is 50% more double attack rate and 30% more triple attack rate now when you max those out. So that is a very, very high combo rate. So that said, you're going to probably want one or even both of those. So some very good ones to get is definitely the attack power, the HP, and the combo rates. The burst damage is okay. It's welcome, but if you're strong enough, you probably won't need it. It's still something that your whole union has to discuss, because not everybody in the union might be strong enough for it. It's the case for mine. What should probably be avoided is the debuff resist and the debuff chance. Because debuff resist is your resistance towards debuffs landing on you. It has never ever been worth it. And the debuff chance, as much as there's a strategy to sit back and just keep paralyzing the boss, they're getting more and more resistant to that. And on top of it, that debuff chance it can increase how often you pull that off, but me personally, I feel like it's wasted. So you're better off with the damage output for sure, and then the HP as well. My union has made it pretty much a point where, since you take a lot of damage later on down the line anyways as the fights keep going on throughout the day, my union has made it a point to pretty much just max out the attack power, max out the HP, max out the burst, and as good as the double attack is, considering it's 50%, the triple attack is overall more beneficial. So we pretty much more or less decided to max out the triple attack instead of the double attack. But before we used to do half double, half triple, which is 50-50. So that's a decent strategy. It might be different depending on your union. Who knows? And then not everybody can apply grail buffs anyways. Usually the union leader that does it. So there's that. But anyways, and I do remember for sure it's definitely Thrones. But Thrones has standard and expert difficulty. These will not count to your union participation points, but it will count to your personal participation point score, which is individual. Seraph will count towards all participation point rankings and whatnot. It is the main bulk of the event, but to have an easier time with the Seraphs, you need to do the Thrones. So that's the main thing to go with this. Now, dealing with the fights themselves, I have not read any of this ahead of time, so bear with me. But by the looks of things, it's going to up its own chance of landing debuffs. All 4 of the fights, whenever their HP hits half. So keep that in mind. That's going to be a big thing. From what it's going at, it's looking like flame buffs, which will start taking out percentages of your HP for a few turns. So you have to be careful with that one. And they do look like they can possibly stack. So that said, you can start losing a lot of HP on this. Honestly, debuff resistance would be tempting, but you should not get it because you can basically heal that stuff off of you or just get flat out immunity towards it. Water is very good for that because this is a fire union event and water's got the advantage. Other elements are actually pretty good at it. I would say is both light and wind, but wind has a disadvantage here, so it's probably not recommended to use them. But you may also have your hands on someone called Dion Set. It's hard to pronounce her name. She's a thunder healer. If you're using a thunder team, she's pretty good at removing debuffs as well and keeping your team healthy. Honestly, use any element aside from wind because you do not want wind. And quite frankly, if you're using fire against them, that lowers their chances of debuffing you as well. Water has the least chance of getting debuffed due to how resistances work. But going further into other stuff they can do, all the raging ones will end up doing a lot of damage basically. Firefights have always pretty much been damage races, but if you are debuffed, you will take even more damage by the looks of it. So be very, very careful of that. Damage can rack up very, very fast. So the general strategy for all the fights basically is to try and keep debuffs off you as much as possible. Because if I'm looking at this correctly, you can really see it rack up a lot of damage if you are not careful. So be very, very wary of what's happening. Now, that said, their soul recommendations, I don't know if they have one here. Me personally, I would recommend if you can if you can actually cover all the different the debuff removals and whatnot, my recommendation to you is to get a soul that can deal a lot of damage and try to end the fight as quickly as possible. If not, you will most definitely need a healing soul, and preferably you would probably want Andromeda with her weapon that removes debuffs off of you, and Maiden's Prayer, which will remove debuffs as well. Another alternative would probably be Mordred, who can put Vicissitudes of Fortune, which should lower the debuff resistance of your enemies, as well as raise your debuff resistance. And even having her with Maiden's Prayer could also help as well. But if you're not going with the healing aspect to try and reduce the debuffs, then you're going to want to go offensive. And of course, you can always bring out a tank, which is Joan or even Romulus, because some people have her too. That's another option as well. But the debuffs are going to be the biggest part of the fight, because as much as the damage nukes will start growing on you the more you kill the Seraph bosses, you still will lose a good chunk to the debuffs. Because if I'm adding this up correctly, you can easily lose just at least 30% of your HP if you let the half HP trigger stack, stay on you. And then there's a chance you can get debuffed during a normal attack too. So that said, it's really gonna hurt. Also, forgot to mention too that the charge turn count is 4 for Seraph and 3 for Thrones, regardless of which fight. So there's that too. Now, when it comes to the rewards, this is what you need to get everything for the basic event rewards, because there's a ranking reward too. But 3 million participation points on your own. It doesn't matter if you do Thrones or Seraph for this, but you do need to do nothing but Seraph in order to get the other 3 rewards, which is the Union participation points, which is 60 million among your whole Union. And quite frankly, if you get pretty strong, you can do most of that on your own. It's been proven, if not all of it. Because I can generally get, if I really hunker down day by day, I can get 10 million a day just by killing a whole bunch of Seraphs on my own. So it's doable. But your entire Union has to get at least 60 million points on that one. There also has to be at least 250 expert kills of Seraph and 500 ultimate kills of Seraph in order to get all the rewards, because it's split between all those. Now, if you're looking for the ranking rewards, it is based on how many expert kills you get in one day, how many ultimate kills you get in one day, and how many participation points you get in one day. Now, participation points in one day is based on individual. So that said, you'll end up getting basically points from anything you do in the event. You'll want the Seraph participation points more than anything else, because of the fact that that will get you more, since you'll generally gain more health. But when it comes to the ultimate and expert rankings, you have to do that in one day. So preferably for those, you want to save up at least 400 divine rings, put out as many buffs as possible for the entire day, and do as much as you can in one day. Some people have sat on the game for a full 24 hours doing it. I personally don't recommend it unless you're really going that hard on rankings, but spending all your buffs on one day specifically is a very good strategy. So that's something to know. As for the rewards themselves, the SSR weapons, they're the same general stuff as the other Seraph Union events. This one happens to be a glaive for the assault weapon and a spear for the defender one. And they both go into extra large when you final break them, so that means it will become 30% when you max out its skill level and its final broken. So keep that in mind. Also, an interesting thing about the glaive, if you do happen to put it on your soul for some reason, it will give a fire attribute buff to everybody, so that means it'll give elemental attack for a few turns when they burst. I don't necessarily recommend using that weapon for the soul, because there's better weapons, but at the same time, you could still do that. It's a possible strategy, especially considering that there is a soul called Medea who uses glaives as a weapon. That could be a thing for her if you don't have her fire one, because getting weapons for the S rank souls is very time consuming, if you want to be honest. So that's a possible thing too. Also, the stats on these is very high for attack power, so that's another thing to consider. And like I mentioned earlier in the video, you do get more copies of these SSR weapons from the Phantom version of this later on. So that means you can literally have 60% assault in just 2 weapons, which isn't a bad idea. For those that are trying to raise a fire team, it's a very good strategy, because generally you want to have at least a good 150% or 160% assault, and then also have other effects as well to possibly spike up the multipliers. You'll still want more assault than that, but that's a good general starting point. That said, 2 weapons will get you almost halfway there. So that's why the Seraph events are still pretty good, because they all give the 30% assault weapons when you take the time to final break them. But also other rewards you'll get. If you're looking for the special soul points, this is the best time to get those, because those are spread all throughout the different ranking rewards. You can also get accessories as well, so keep that in mind. You will get accessories as well as stuff to upgrade them with. Now that we get the EXP orbs, I think you should get accessory experience points as well, so you can get orbs to spend on those. Also, that means that you won't see your inventory getting clogged by the weapon materials as well. So that said, if you haven't already got the weapon materials, you might have missed your chance, so keep that in mind. But anyways, that's all for this. More this is going to come soon, and again, once the event starts, or basically once maintenance for the event starts, you cannot leave your union that you're currently in, so make sure your current union is capable of at least getting the list done. If not, then you might have a much harder time later on. And then keep in mind that these debuffs are very, very strong. These debuffs are probably the biggest hassle. Don't waste your buffs on debuff resistance. Instead, just find characters that can heal the debuffs off of you. But anyways, that's all for this. More of this is going to come soon, and take care.